Most of the conversations on this podcast are about account management inside software companies or services firms with long contracts and clear renewal dates. Well, today's episode is going to stretch that frame. My guest is Niko Ivanov. He is partner and head of account management at NOX Media, which is a digital agency that works with artists, creators, and brands whose growth depends on attention, relevance, and trust. Niko and I talk about how his company defines account health without the traditional SaaS or software company metrics, why proactive account management is an offensive function and not a defensive one, how discipline, process, and the EOS system keeps clients green before there's any type of issue that comes up, and what account management leaders can learn from this type of industry where you have much different contract terms and a very different customer set. So let's get into it. I hope you enjoy this episode of Account Management Secrets. If you're an account manager, you already know this. You're the one keeping the business running. You own the client relationships, drive the revenue, and solve the tough problems for your customers. But here's the challenge. Most companies don't give account managers the training or recognition they deserve. That's what you'll get here on the Account Management Secrets podcast. I'm Alex Raymond, and after working with thousands of account managers, I know what separates the best from the rest. In this show, we cover exactly what you need to succeed: handling tough client conversations, driving renewals and upsells with confidence, and proving your value every single day. There's no fluff, no outdated sales tactics, just real practical strategies you can use right now to grow your accounts and build a successful career. If that sounds like what you've been looking for, hit subscribe and let's get into it. Hey, Niko, great to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, likewise, Alex. Thanks for having me on.
Now, I'm excited to get into this. You work in a different kind of industry than a lot of the folks who listen to Account Management Secrets are in, and certainly one that I don't have a lot of exposure to. So tell us a little bit, just as we get started here, tell us about NOX Media. What do you guys do? Who are your customers? How do you think about the world?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, NOX Media, we are a 7-year-old agency. It's been an incredible 7-year run and super excited for what 2026 has for us. But essentially, we function in the space of talent, right? We work with talent and brands. I'd say majority of our book of business is really in the talent space. To define talent, I really mean music artists, but we do work with athletes, podcasters, thought leaders as well. So yeah, that's really where we function. And over the course of the last 7 years, there's been a lot of figuring out that lane. Music is definitely in our DNA and really where we started. And along the way, we took in different brands, different kind of clients, trying to figure it out. But for the most part, we've really landed and staked our flag in the ground that talent and talent ancillary brands is the space that we thrive in and function in at the highest level.
And so what does someone come to you for? So if I'm talent, I'm a musician or a band, what do I come to NOX Media for? What are you guys actually doing for me?
Yeah, definitely. So first and foremost, we are a digital marketing agency that hyper focuses on social strategy, both paid and organic, as well as content creation. So if you were to come to us, that's exactly what you're looking for. And it really just depends on a case-by-case basis. Can function as A to Z or as you would like, right? We can drill down as far as you want, where we're really taking over your socials, running the strategy, managing the community, posting the content, writing the captions, as well as even creating the content, right? And most of the time, clients will come to us because they've got a lot of stuff going on, especially in the world of talent. When you're flying all over the place, when you're recording music, you're on interviews, you're on press runs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. On top of being a human being, it gets, pretty difficult. It's a pretty big, bandwidth suck for you to really run your own socials, especially when you start to integrate in different brand deals and all of the requirements that, you're legally obligated to make sure appear on your socials, right? Where we're coming in and we're getting plugged in and interfacing with your label, with your management team, with your agency, with your press team, et cetera, right? So we're able to basically consolidate all of the different things that are going on in your career, make sure that they not only appear on your socials to tell the story and maximize the moments, but really to create as much impact as we possibly can. So again, it's really circumstantial and case by case why a client would come to us. But that is in a nutshell what we do here at NOX.
Nice. All right, cool. A lot of times on this podcast and a lot of the folks that I connect with, we're talking about account management from the point of view of a services company or a software company or somebody selling some physical good, where it feels like a lot more, I guess I would say, corporate than what you're describing to me here. So when you look at this through the account management lens, now I assume that you guys at NOX Media have this same have the same sort of general economics of the business, where most revenue comes from existing customers every year. So retention of clients is therefore really important, and you try to keep them and grow them and keep the business stable without having too many surprises. But what's the frame that you start to put around account management for a business like this? I mean, I know you're a partner in the business. You're kind of the COO, if you will. How do you start to frame account management in this world?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, right? It's all about retention, especially in an industry like ours, and I'm sure this is very similar across other verticals as well. But for us, the entertainment industry is very niche. It's a very small community, right? As vast as it is, the word gets around if you do great work, if you're professional, if you're buttoned up, whatever it may be. Or on the other side, that word gets around very quickly as well. So for us, when we sign on with a client, our goal is obviously to retain them as long as possible, not only for the bottom line, but also because of the fact that there's going to be a lot of different touch points. And as they succeed or have different moments come up in their career, people are going to look to see, all right, well, what teams do they have in place, right? So when we're working with an Usher or Sean Paul or Davido, who we've worked with for years at this point, a lot of the work that we get in terms of new business, the new attention that we're getting is not even so much from an outreach perspective. We really do little to no cold outreach at all at this point, which, I'm blessed to say it's mostly inbound, right? Because the fact that they're seeing us drive results for these clients, and thus begets, account management and kind of the framework that we, view that through and what is required of a good account manager. And, really our business is kind of functioning off of two major cogs or departments, if you will. So we've got strategy and we've got creative, right? And again, it's going to be circumstantial case by case, like what levers we're pulling and what cogs are really a part of each account. But if we're coming in holistic, like big picture, we're not only handling your strategy, but we're also creating your content. The account manager is going to be the main driver of that, right? Understanding, like I said, what all the key initiatives are for a client, and that's going to come through interfacing with all of those other ancillary team members or departments, if you will, under a talent's umbrella, management, label, PR, different brand partners that they have, and making sure that we're not only hitting all of those deadlines and getting those posts up, but we're doing so in a way that's the most additive. And what I mean by that is you could have what would really separate like a great account manager from, a decent account manager would be, say, a client has a big brand deal incoming or, is already active and we need to get some content done. It's one thing to just abide by, all right, this is the content the way that the brand partner wants it. Yeah, we have to take that into account, but also at the same time, is this going to actually perform well and serve the greater good of our client, of the talent, right? And finding ways to take those requests and those requirements, but also, put it into the voice of our clients. So that way it doesn't look like this forced pay to play ad living on their socials, right? Then all of a sudden socials aren't so social anymore. And so, again, I think a lot of what we're doing is very white glove. It's a lot of attention to detail. There's a lot of touch points of communication that our account managers have to have on a day-to-day basis. And so having those containers of what are our milestones that we're trying to hit for these clients in a given quarter or year? What are even the KPIs, the metrics that we're using to measure against those milestones, and what's really important to the client? So we have our internal milestones that we want to hit to ensure that we're driving the most impact, creating case study worthy work, but also simultaneously playing into like, what does this client want? Some clients value things at higher weights than others, right? Some people are like, I find a lot of value in NOX that I don't have to even touch my social media. Some really want to drive more streams or ticket sales for an upcoming tour, or all of the above, right? It's not a one size fits all in this business. And so again, your account manager has to be not only really in tune with the SOPs that we have in place here at NOX, but also really in tune with the specific needs and milestones that are set up for a given client. And sometimes those can be moving targets because, especially in entertainment, you might be on a big album push, you might have multiple tours in a year, and then all of a sudden it goes, into a lull period. Well, what are you going to do as an account manager in a lull period, which can be equally as challenging in its own right, to continue to grow socials, grow that top of funnel, so that when we do get into more mid and bottom funnel initiatives that are going to be really valuable for impact, that we're in a better place to drive even more explosive growth, right? And kind of beat those historical figures that we, had previously accomplished.
This is so wild. It's like an education in the music industry. I think, all right, musicians, they're creative, they're recording their stuff, and then they go on tour, and then that's kind of it. And instead, what I'm learning from you is, they've got a huge social presence that they've got to get working. Then they've got brands coming to them, and they want products represented. And they got to figure out all the tours and the logistics, and so there's a whole like machine underneath them that I'd never even given much thought to. And so it's really interesting to hear like how this works. So you're telling me that these famous musicians, you've mentioned some of them, they don't do their own socials, so they don't actually like my Instagram posts or reply to the comments. You guys are all doing outsource that?
No, that's not necessarily true. I mean, again, it would be really like case by case. We've never had a client, at least for us, that's completely like hands off, right? In fact, we always encourage our clients to be very in the mix, not only so that way they're seeing what's happening on socials, but can really have that like intentional connection point with fans. And so when I say like hands off, like, mentioning the value add, right? Like somebody seeing like hands off is like everything that is required, I don't necessarily have to do, and I can just enjoy the positives of social media, for lack of a better term. There's no stress or pressure on me because I already have other stressors and things that must get done. Like you kind of mentioned, between getting ready for tour, doing tour, recording music, interviews, press looks. And again, don't forget, they're all human beings, right? So they all have to live life. Most of them have families, significant others. And so functioning at this, very fast-paced career that's in certain cases taking them all over the globe while still being a human. And so, yeah, I want to reemphasize that if you're getting a like or a comment back from a music artist, it's most likely them. That would be so... I guess what I'm trying to say is, in the big picture, us commenting back to a fan, it's so minuscule in comparison to all of the other things that we have to do, that would be something that's more happening from the music themselves.
Sure. You guys are more looking at the big picture. Well, so Niko, when I think about the account management world, there's sort of two sides of the coin. There's the retention side that we talked about. So we know that retention is the baseline for profitability. It's the baseline for us to establish a solid business. The other side of this is expansion. So how we grow with a customer. What does expansion look like in your world? Is this adding, a new social media service? Is that how you expand with someone? They say at the beginning, just manage my TikTok, and then next you move on to some other service. Or is it, I want you to go from socials to managing my brand presence, or I want you to do something bigger. What's the typical arc there when you start, say, small level one with a customer, and then you're adding on?
Yeah, for us, we don't, the way that our services are set up is like, we're not going to come on for just one of your social media platforms. Like, we're never just going to take on solely your TikTok. Like, we're either coming in across all of your socials or we're not at all. It's just not beneficial for us. It doesn't fit our business model. And so really when we're coming in, there's kind of like one of three tiers that you can really choose from. And again, that's going to, the biggest variable is going to be how much content are we creating? And are we shooting it? Do you have a shooter in house? Are we just editing stuff, or are we actually sending people out on the road with you, shooting it, editing it, as well as developing the strategy? Or on the other side, maybe we're just shooting content for you and we're not handling the strategy. That's a little bit fewer and further between. And so I guess to answer your question directly, it does depend on where you come in. The arc doesn't vary a whole lot. It's either you're coming in for strategy, and then an arc could be now we're actually creating your content as well, or you came in just for content and now we're handling your strategy as well. We have really tried to just hone in and keep our scopes, and not try and step too far out of the bounds of like what we are certifiably great at doing. Of course, in growing a business over the last 7 years, we have tried a lot of different things, but at this point, it's like, hey, this is what we're really good at. Let's stay in this container. And if you want to have certain add-ons, like for instance, paid media, like I'd mentioned earlier, that's not in our typical scope of work. But we can add that on, right? We're more organic social. If you want to add paid social, that could be a potential add-on. If you want to add on more shoots, if you want to add on, managing your CRM, we can do those things. And of course, once we've worked with a client for a long enough time and that trust is there, we get questions all the time. Oh, can you do this for my website? What about something for my merch? And again, it really is just going to depend. But for the most part, we're trying to stay within our container with a couple of very specific add-ons. And then if worst case scenario, we just want our clients to win. So we'll just connect them with, potential partner agency or just, friends in the industry that we've worked with and know can do great work. Because if you come to us for your website, we're already doing your social, your content creation, your overarching digital strategy. You come to us for a website, maybe it's not something that we can take on at that time. I will refer you to who I believe is the best in the business, but I'm not going to make that referral and put our company name at stake, obviously, unless we know that they're going to absolutely crush it. So that's what the typical arc would look like.
I'm gonna guess, one of my assumptions here in hearing you talk is that there's some challenge in working with the talent and working with these kind of with musicians. You think about kind of all the stories you hear about musicians. You think, boy, it's probably pretty difficult, challenging, finicky customers. Maybe the wind blows one way one day, the wind blows another day, the next day. How do you train your team to deal with this? So, like, what are the processes you guys do? What's the mindset that you try to get the team in? Like, how do you set yourselves up to work through the characters and the customers to make sure that you're actually able to deliver what they're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that that's necessarily exclusive to music artists, right? I think
everybody has difficult clients.
Yeah, everyone has difficult clients, and again, I've worked with brands as well, and have seen some interesting characters and behavior outside of music, right? So I think there's this potential stigma outside looking in at music artists, and you kind of like assume that like rock star energy, which obviously is present, right? But for the most part, I wouldn't say that it's actually as finicky as one might assume. That being said, I think everyone needs to know that like we are in the people business, right? And you have to understand at a deep level the likes, dislikes, and of your clients, and not only from like a content or strategy perspective, but even just the way that they like to operate, right? So we have our SOPs. Certain clients you just aren't going to click open links and look at a posting timeline. So maybe they need something that's a little bit more ad hoc. And again, for us, I think that's where we really separate ourselves, is the fact that we are very white glove. And so, yes, we have this container that we operate from and try and, keep it within that as much as we can. But when clients are maybe, a little less, maybe they have a little less want or even capability to operate within that container, it's like, well, let's, kind of figure out a way to have best of both worlds, where it's like we're functioning out of our container, but getting the feedback and the approvals in whatever way that they is best fit for their lives and schedules, right? So I think, again, just account management in general, not even exclusive to the music industry, is like, you got to be ironclad in your mind, right? You got to, you can't take things overly personal. Like, at the end of the day, this is business. This is not a personal attack. And I think that, we've been really blessed over the last 7 years to not really deal with a lot of insanity. It's, of course, there's, and what I mean by that is just like personalities that are just wild, right? We've been really blessed to not have to deal with a lot of that stuff. Of course, there are stories over the last 7 years where we have had to deal with that, but for the most part, it's like music artists are human beings, and they act and function just like anybody else would. Just because they're this massive superstar doesn't all of a sudden make them, more finicky or more difficult. In fact, some of the biggest superstars that we've worked with have been some of the most chill clients that we've had. And so I think just account management in general is, you got to be ironclad. You got to understand what the task is and what you're trying to accomplish in that week, that month, that quarter, that year, and keeping the train on the tracks. That's your job as the account manager, regardless of vertical or the emotion of that day, and not taking things overly personal. That's really like the number one thing that I would think that an account manager needs to have.
Don't take it too personally.
Yeah. And then also just like have short-term memory, and what I mean by that is, what was said yesterday, leave that in yesterday. And then even short-term memory as it pertains to wins and losses, right? You drop a ball, maybe something didn't go as well as we thought it would. Okay, you got to keep it moving. Similarly, when you have a win, you cannot continue to think about that win. You can use the success or the failure as a growth moment, but you can't just hang your hat on, well, 6 months ago we had this post go, this campaign do really well, or this post that went viral. Okay, well, what are you doing for me today? And so I think all of this is, don't take things overly personal, have short-term memory, and keep the train on the tracks, regardless of, the potential emotion that somebody may be facing from the client side on a given day.
So when it comes to process, like the mechanics of account management, I talked to a lot of other people on this podcast, and they're doing things like quarterly business reviews or annual strategy reviews, depending on the cadence and depending on the customer. They're doing, so QBRs, or they're doing internal account reviews, or they're doing account plans, and they've got a whole system around that. To what extent is that rigor something that you're following as well? So what are the artifacts that the team is using? Like, what does that process actually look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think what gets measured gets managed. So we definitely have a lot of internal tracking in place. Like I had mentioned, the internal milestones. What I was talking about earlier is like we're looking at those on a quarterly basis, but realistically, you're resetting the milestones on a quarterly basis of adding up to like what the annual goal is. But a good account manager is looking at that on a weekly basis on like, how on track or off track are we to hit this quarter's goals? So that way I can bake that into the strategy of this week, cohesively with all of the other initiatives that are going on for the client. So we've got the quarterly reviews internally. We also are doing a deep dive on the analytics on a monthly basis, where we're delivering those reports to our clients. What worked, what didn't work. Here's some key wins, some optimization opportunities that we're after. Maybe team members that we need to adjust their scope, or what's kind of going on there. And then even on a weekly basis, we're delivering a high level snapshot of that stuff as well. So we're really always touching some sort of review process on a weekly, monthly, and quarterly basis. Because as I said, and my business partner Sam says all the time, what gets measured gets managed. It's not his quote by any means, but it's something that we definitely live and die by. And then even on just like a partner level, we really love the EOS operating system. And so we have our high level leadership meetings that we're taking on a weekly basis. We meet in person every quarter, and then have a big end of year wrap up. And that even has trickle downs where I'm using that similar process, that EOS system, for a weekly account team touch base.
I was just gonna ask about that because I know EOS. Gino Wickman, he wrote the book Traction. It's really well regarded. A lot of companies run the entrepreneurial operating system EOS. Tell us about how that then links into what the account management team does. Because when I think about EOS, I know that there's different breakdowns of like who's doing what roles and what's our big vision and what's our quarterly rocks and all this kind of stuff. There's quite a lot of discipline and process to that. I would love to hear how you translate that into the account management function.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, obviously it starts at the top when we're developing our quarterly and annual rocks and having those discussions at the partner level. We choose to do a town hall every quarter where we're not only discussing with our team the quarterly rocks, but also the measurement against those, right? So Q2, hey, here's where we landed on all of the Q1 rocks. Here's where we, because of that, where we're trying to go in Q2, and then the cascading assignments and roles and how we're going to get there, and, how we're either going to build upon wins or in areas that we came up short, what kind of tweaks are we going to make? And obviously that touches everything, right? That could be, well, we need to bring in new tooling and systems, or we need to make a couple other hires, or, we actually might need to not have this person on the team anymore, whatever it may be. It's all cascading from there. And then when I take that over to the account team specific meetings, it's walking through the highest level priorities for that week. And then I really love the issues discussion portion of the Traction, the EOS system, of like going through, hey, here are the top issues that we faced in the last week. Let's identify, discuss, and then come up with solutions, and then having assigned to-dos on that weekly basis, right? And so that's always like a great refresh. So Mondays are a big meeting day for us where we're doing team-wide meeting, right? Almost like a team weekly stand-up, going through a nice segue, right? Like, hey, how are you? Icebreaker kind of thing across the team. And then really getting into the current status of every client. And we really use a color grading system. Like, is this client on track? Are they off track? Or are they at risk? Right. And what are we going to do? Right. And then even taking that information into our partner meetings, saying, all right, well, here's where we're at in terms of on track versus off track. Well, 87% of our clients are in the green. Great. Now let's hyper focus on, the 13% that are not, and what are we going to do to get them in the green, while simultaneously strategizing how we're going to keep the green clients green and even try to achieve.
There's a lot of discipline to that. And so I've talked to a bunch of people who do these, like, some people call this I remember one person, Josh Abdullah at Asana, called this the red renewal system. Another one of my guests, Michael Rapp from IntelliPeer, he called it the get to green meeting. So like how you get everybody to green. So you're basically saying you do these weekly meetings, you have the IDS discussions, so the issue discussions, see what's going on. And then look then across your dashboards of clients to say who's red, who's yellow, who's green. And then you're deep diving into the reds and yellows to say, what are we doing about it? What are the steps? What are the real issues here? And stuff like that. Where does all this live? Like, what's the next step from that?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Asana, so we love Asana. We live and breathe in Asana in a lot of ways, right? And that's kind of like that high level dashboard. And then I personally love Notion, right? And so we've deployed Notion, and we have so many different SOPs across virtually every function within NOX. And so there's even SOPs of like how to, from postmortem to bi-monthly check-ins with clients, to even how to objectively grade a client red, yellow, or green. Right. And then even SOPs from there of like, if they're in the red for 2 weeks, this is what we're doing. If they're in the red for 1 week, this is what we're doing. Of because it's like, all right, if they're in the red for X amount of time, we need to deploy, SEAL Team 6 and really get down on like this week, we have to hyper focus on these clients. Otherwise, we're at risk of losing them. And again, not only from the high level business is like retention and attention. The more we retain, the better we are. So we're not having like this leaky bucket syndrome, right? Where we're getting new clients, but also losing clients like that. That's not how we're going to scale. We need to retain, get new clients, retain them, get even more new clients. And so again, we're really functioning out of Notion and have these SOPs that have specific tasks based on these indicators. And it's just relentless rigor to those SOPs. And then the beautiful thing about being, a smaller company who has been around for a while, most of our staff has been tenured for a long time. So if certain things aren't working in that mindset of what got us here won't get us there, if certain things aren't working anymore, then we can go in and tweak those SOPs, right? And we've even built that into our culture, which I love so much, is like, hey, if there's a fix that you see or something, that we need to solve as it pertains to our systems, please dive in. And all of our staff know that and really walk that out, because company wide, we know that, we don't rise to our goals. It's you follow your systems. So if your systems aren't set up to hit those goals, then it won't really matter. And then you can have a great couple weeks or a great year with a certain client. And then all of a sudden there's no true system of like, how do we keep elevating, or God forbid we get into a bad spot. How do we get out of it without like a true system? Then, what are we doing?
That's cool. I want to come back to what you were talking about the definition of the red, yellow, green, understanding how to bucket the customers. So we all agree, here's the vocabulary, here are the signals, here's what makes one red or yellow or green, and then how long it stays. So you said, if they're in there for a certain period of time, then we got to deploy you or your partner or someone like that to go in there and try to unblock whatever issues are there. So what are those definitions?
Yeah. So for us at a really high level, because it's like a 2-page doc, right? So like what would actually indicate if we're in the yellow versus in the green versus even being in the red. So I'll just kind of give you high level is like, we're basing it off of likelihood to renew, right? We used to base it off of, if we're hitting certain metrics or certain posting cadence, but that became not the clearest indicator. So it's like, all right, likelihood to renew. Green, obviously, very likely they are going to renew. Yellow, we're at risk. They might not renew. Well, then we got to drill into, well, why might they not renew? Well, we keep having issues with this. Maybe a client's blocking a certain thing that we're trying to execute upon, or we have slow content turnaround, and we can really start to dissect the issues around why might they not renew, and then come up with a strategy to get rid of those blocks. And then red is, if we're in the red, we're basically, we know that they're not going to renew. So very few clients ever truly fall into the red for us. And I think that's because we have so much rigor around the yellow that it keeps clients from getting the red. Typically, a client has only fallen into the red if they've already given us a heads up that they're not going to, continue on.
And you guys are what, on annual service contracts, or what do they normally look like?
It's really case by case. For the most part, it's annual. We try to do like 6-month minimum commitments. So yeah, I would say typically it's like a semi-annual.
So wrap it up here. I want to ask you a question about your philosophy of account management, Niko. I've seen there's sort of two sides. There are the people who say that account management is a defensive function, is a support function. His job is to keep our customers around and make sure they aren't walking out the door. And then there are people who say, no, this is an offense function, and this is around growth. So kind of like support versus growth. Where do you fall on that distinction, and how do you think more deeply about the account management role?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big sports guy. They say defense wins championships, but for me, it's always been about the high flying offense. We got to go score. And so for me, I think it is very much circumstantial. Certain clients will not let you play a lot of offense, but a core value for us at NOX is proactive, right? So we really love the 3 Ps: positive, proactive, and productive. So for us, proactivity is huge, right? I'm mostly having those harder conversations with account managers that are not proactive, right? I don't subscribe to the notion of defense when thinking about account management. I am very much, we have to be proactive. We have to be the ones, we have to be the pace car. We must be the person and the team and the agency, like, putting this is what we want to do. Oh, you have a song coming up. This is what we want to do. Oh, there's cover art created. Do you already have your banners done? No? Okay, cool. Give it to us so we can make it. Oh, you're going to Paris Fashion Week. Okay, do you have a videographer? Do you have content in mind? Have you synced up with anybody? Have you talked to your brands? Instead of clients coming to us and saying, hey, we're going to Paris Fashion Week, and then you just kind of sit on your hands, and they might say, oh, by the way, we have to get a post up for, Amiri because we have this thing going on, right? Being proactive, to me, especially, in this sector of the industry and entertainment, is like, that's how I think we have historically shown the most value. We've gotten a lot of compliments on our proactive nature. So, long story short, offense. We have to be on offense.
Good. Love it. That's a fantastic answer. Well, Niko Ivanov, thanks so much for being here. You're the partner and head of account management at NOX Media. I love learning about the business, understanding what it looks like to manage talent and brands in a little more detail. So really appreciate the conversation.
Likewise, Alex. Appreciate it. I hope you have a good rest of your day. We'll talk soon.